Hello BookTube, welcome back to AusLit 101 and we're moving on today. We done middle grade yesterday, now it's time we move on to young adult. I've got 4 young adult books here to talk about today. Some pretty famous ones, but also there's probably a surprise book that you may have not known was by an Australian author, but we'll get to that later. So the first book I'm going to recommend for you today is Tomorrow When the War Began by John Marsden. This is taught in schools now. It's becoming like a modern classic in terms of YA here, and it's the first book in a 7 book series pretty much, which I haven't read. I've only read the first one, and we follows like 7 young teenagers. They return from like a camping trip in Australia, only to find that the country has been invaded by some foreign occupation, and everyone is being captured. And then the teenagers pretty much transform from being everyday people to like literally survivalist guerrilla fighters, and it's just them trying to survive as a group together, and it's really good. It's lovely and it's well written. I love the themes of like the way they talk about coming of age together. It's lovely, and the sudden loss that these people go through, and like the way these young people deal with responsibility and also loyalty, the way it's shown throughout the book with certain dire situations. I think it's just incredible. I need to keep going with this series, but Tomorrow When the War Began is literally going to be taught in schools forever. I feel like, in terms of like middle grade, young adult, and all that. And then the surprise book you may not have known was Australian is The Book Thief by Markus Zusak. Yeah, I didn't even realize this was by an Australian author for like the longest time. And when I looked it up one day, I was like, oh my god, he's one of us. But anyway, everyone knows about The Book Thief. It's the Grim Reaper narrates it, and we follow a young girl. What I can't remember her name. She's like Liesel L. Also Liesel Liesel. And she's living in Nazi Germany. After her older brother dies, she's fostered into another family where she learns to read and steals books. While that's going on, her adopted family is protecting people from Nazis, the Jewish people. And what do you say? It's literally The Book Thief. It's not my favorite book ever, but I do get why it has become like a real contender for like a good modern classic. I'm just a bit burnt out on World War II fiction, but I definitely see why people love this book. So go and check out The Book Thief. Then we're going to go back in time a bit. We're going to be talking about Playing Beatie by Ruth Park. Ruth Park's one of the biggest authors Australia's ever had, really. I see her everywhere, and this is the only one I've read from her. And again, we follow Abigail Kirk, and she's 14 years old, and she's living in Sydney in the 1970s. And she's dealing currently with the fallout of her parents' separation. And she becomes friends with a mysterious young girl, and pretty much the girl takes her back in time to the 1870s, 1873 in particular, which for her was 100 years ago. And there she meets the Bow family, who are Scottish immigrants, and they own like a local shop. And she learns about the realities of life in Australia during the 1870s, through just her exposure to like the harshness of life, whether it's poverty or disease or just the hard-working life. And if you've gone through and looked at AusLit, the non-fiction books, you'd have a good picture of what life was like back then. And she has like a little romance with an 18-year-old sailor named Judah, which is really sweet. But then obviously she returns back to her life, and she becomes more of an empathetic person, and she gets humbled a little bit. And it turns out that the Bow family that she stayed with in the past, the descendants are her neighbors actually, and which is really sweet. And it's a young adult classic. Ruth Park isn't going anywhere, but so check out that one if you want a bit more of a classicy YA in Australia. And then the last one I'm recommending is a more of a contemporary one again, the Big River Little Fish by Belinda Jeffery. Sorry. Again, another coming of age book. This is about Tom, who's 15 years old, and the story is set during the 1956 Murray River flood that happened in South Australia. And as this flood's slowly starting to happen, Tom turns out to be gifted, except he's misunderstood, and it's really a social outcast because he's illiterate, and he has some really lovely, powerful, deep connections with some local residents on the river too. And as all of this chaos is about to happen, this big natural disaster, Tom begins to really learn about his family's secrets as his biological father re-enters the picture, and comes back to the small town before disaster strikes, and it has a massive, incredible, lovely twist ending. It's so deep and so interesting, and this is her second book. I can't remember Miss Jeffery's first book, but she's an author that I've always was like, I've got to go back and read more of her. But yeah, Big River Little Fish is just another lovely book. And so yeah, that's just some quick 4 quick recommendations for Australian young adult books. Again, I've left out so much, so let me know in the comments any recommendations you have. And yeah, thank you so much for watching BookTube, and I will see you next time.